All right. Thanks for joining, everybody. Super excited to give this talk again. So the idea here is AI art really art? And I'll just start off by saying, I think this is like a very dumb question. If anyone's gatekeeping art, I think it's really like the wrong framework for having a conversation, but it does bring up these ideas around what's happening here with AI art and is it the same and is it different? And it leads to some interesting conversation. So maybe it's not interesting to try to answer that question specifically, but it does bring up an interesting conversation. So, why is this question important now? And I think there's been some very loud critics and a lot of really rapid progress. And so we can look at some critics from our favorite critic platform, Twitter here. And here's a very cutting one. Just goes after all of AI, not even just AI art. AI is not AI, it's just theft. AI art is art theft. And this one actually embodies AI as something entirely and makes it an enemy. This thing wants our jobs. It's actively anti-artist. And so you'll see these very long threads and people will start to describe exactly what it's doing and how it works. And they're very angry and oftentimes they're very incorrect. They don't even know how these models work. But what's really true is they do have these strong opinions about how is it to train models on artists' work and what impact does this have on artists? And it's very real emotions that's bubbling up in the arts community. I think will only get stronger over the next year. Now, these conversations are really nothing new. I think there's been big shifts in technology and big shifts around communication. And I really love this little piece here, which is changing how people communicate will always change the world. And we're seeing that happen again. If you look back at a little bit of the history of technology and art, right away, what's the very first form of art? Not quite the cave painting, probably bards and poets just sitting by a fire and talking. And then somebody came up with this idea, hey, we could like encode this onto a wall with smoke, and probably took forever to kind of even make some amount of charcoal and then to like brick in these dark lines. It would have been painstaking to do something like this and just taken forever. And you can only do black and white and very loose forms. And then people invented brushes and you could do, accurate lines. And then people invented different types of paint and you could get more hues, and blue was very expensive and hard to come by. And now it's in every pair of jeans because we can make it synthetically. Here's an example of even taking some of this old art and then repurposing it with new technology, projecting it all over walls. This Van Gogh exhibit projected throughout a museum. Photography was interesting in this progression of technology and art because it was one of the first times the conversation really changed from, this is art and this is better art and wow, we can make more art, to like, this is cheating, this is science, this isn't really art. And so when photography first came out, people were fascinated and really loved it. And it had tons of success at state fairs and you kind of saw it everywhere globally. But it was really categorized as a technology and as a science. And to be a good photographer was to very accurately reproduce a scene, to get the colors right, to get the resolution right, to get the details right. And then it started to have this conversation of, can this be art? And things got quite contentious. And so I'll read this quote from Elizabeth Lady Eastlake, one of the foremost 19th century writers on photography. And she listed many of the photograph's shortcomings when it came to rendering the female face. In a black and white photograph, blue eyes looked as colorless as water. Blonde and red hair seemed as if it had been dyed, and very shiny hair turned into lines of light as big as ropes. Meanwhile, she noted that the male head, with its rougher skin and beard or mustache, might have less to fear, but still suffered from a distinct loss of beauty in the photographic portrait. To Lady Eastlake, the photograph, however valuable to relative or friend, has ceased to remind us of a work of art at all. And then in the bottom right here, there's some more conversation around this similar vein. And it says, photography may be applied in a variety of ways not yet contemplated. Yet the feeling gained ground that he had laid down the ideals for artistic photography. And his opinions had far-reaching repercussions. This is John Layton in the talking about kind of, is it art? And then, which was really a heretical view at the time. And most other photographers said this line at the bottom, which was, it is too literal to compete with works of art. And so up here in the right, we have this kind of example of what I say is the rebels moved forward and shaped the world, which is, despite this conversation of, is this art or is it not art? Robert Cornelius here with his self-portrait is widely regarded as the first example of photo editing. And so this was before any computers, and just in the darkroom, he was applying tints in different ways to add borders, to add textures, and to make an artistic effect. And so all these conversations and critic about, what is art, is it or not, the artists pushed forward and just started making art, which gave rise to the pictorialism movement. And so this was, let's forget about representing things accurately. Let's just try to make interesting things with photography. And so you have an example on the left, which is arising to some sort of blue tint, being a very interesting shadow-like framing to get this beautiful composition. We have in the middle, what if we do some sort of blur and soft lighting, get this almost romantic effect. On the right, you have, what if we just start putting on costumes and getting a nude and making weird forms, and just the actual subject itself can start to be the art. What's different this time, though? I think there's this history of technology and art and progress, but something does feel very different that's happening with AI. I think similar to this, the rebels move forward with art. Technology also moves fast and moves without consent. And so it's a quote from Ahmad, who's a CEO of Stability AI. He says, "To be honest, I find most of the ethics debates to be justifications of centralized control, paternalistic silliness that doesn't trust people or society." And so, well, I think this is kind of way too cavalier an attitude. It does show that whether the critics are speaking or not, the technologists kind of just are going to do things, and it's going to roll out to society, and it's going to be in everybody's hands. And really, that question of what's different is, I think this is the sense of harbinger of the dawn of automation. And so it's really the first time we're seeing AI make its way into society. And on the left here is a picture of my lifelong friend and professional illustrator. This is his self-portrait. And on the right is one of the paintings he's done. And so this would have taken him probably 24 hours or so, across multiple days to paint this. Really tons of time, really time consuming. And then before that, it would have taken him 18 years of a professional career of, even before that as a kid, just painting every single day, as many hours as he possibly could to gain this skill. And now, with the snap of a finger, I can create something as good, if not better, as the picture on the right. And it doesn't take me any of that time to gain the skills. And also it comes out in 5 seconds, doesn't take every single brushstroke, doesn't take 24 hours to make the individual piece. So we lose the effort of the career and the effort of the individual instantiation. I think this really leads to, we have no idea what's coming. I remember very clearly this moment because 2013, with the same friend, we were driving to a restaurant, and Bill Gates was going on the news, and everyone was talking about automation is coming, AI is here. And this report had come out, and I think it's McKinsey, maybe some other consulting agency, of who's going to get automated and what are the different probabilities of these different careers. And I was very into AI at the time and still in college, and was somewhat frightened and like, oh man, do I need to pick a different career? Am I going to get automated as well? Could you automate software engineering? And I pulled up this list and I went and found it, and I looked, and I was like, okay, don't worry. Me and my best friend, we're both safe. Here we are. 5% chance of a software developer getting automated, 5% chance or 4% chance of an artist getting automated. And at the very top is 90% chance for taxi drivers and chauffeurs. So as we all know, over the last 10 or so years, there's been billions and billions of dollars poured into taxi driving. And really the best talent and the biggest companies in the industry have all been there. And well, we still don't have self-driving cars. And seemingly overnight, software development is getting automated with Copilot, and fine artists are getting automated, and illustrators with these new AI models. As I said, these questions are really nothing new. I think, is AI art really art? Of course. Like I said, people always ask, are things art or not? But to me, if someone enjoys it, if someone says it's art, if someone has a reaction to it, even if it's just at home and you make it and show no one and think it's art, that's enough for it to be art to me. I think it's rather silly to try to call something not art. Does AI making art cheapen the art? As much as we let it. So there is this thing now where I can create an illustration at the click of a button, and I can say, give me some painting by Van Gogh, and there it is, and it takes no effort. And I think that kind of does cheapen it. And so if you're just kind of doing someone else's exact style and reproducing something and sharing one click, maybe that's not super exciting. Maybe it's fun to share with your friends, but it's not some exciting fine work of art. But also, these things can start to manifest in tools, and you can take, like our friend Hassan, who we interviewed, he said he generated over 20,000 images and has published maybe 100 of those. So does that cheapen it? I don't think so. He's put tons and tons of effort into that. And then does AI replace artists? And I think it's a yes and no. So yes, there is this real automation happening, and you can click and do an illustrator's job now in 2 seconds, and so somebody's getting replaced there. You know, editing photos will probably become much faster for ads and product placement, and so those jobs will probably cease to exist and be very, very much quicker in computers. But does it really replace artists? No, I think it begs the question of what is being an artist, and it's different things depending on the artist. But for some artists, they have a story that's very personal that they share through social media, and people connect with that. Some artists curate a very specific style, and people start to enjoy that. Some of it's timing and connection to culture. When do you release your art? How do you title it? What's the subject? Does it provoke feelings around certain political events and things like that? And so to give a little context on this photo here, I started with kind of white means a lot to me. This was the first time I really thought, like, wow, these things can now make something as good, if not better, than what my friend did with this 18-year career. And so this piece is called Technology Overwhelms the Future. And that's the prompt that went into it and the title. And it now hangs on the wall of my best friend, who's the illustrator, as kind of a connection for both of us to, wow, this is a very strange time we live in. Thanks for listening, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it.